some people tweet really awesome things like, Alan's tweets, but some other people should probably have an advisor check their Twitter before they post something stupid.
Hey, public service announcement to everybody. If you write something on Twitter and you have to think, should I post this? You probably shouldn't.
I know I have way too many messages that I've written, and I'm like, should I send this? Probably not. And then it's like, oh, I should have sent that. And I've sent messages that I should not have sent.
So we all know, a lot of us know who Lyndsey Graham is. He's a senator in the Senate. And he's really known for being wishy-washy and back and forth. Because he was on the Trump train, and then he was against Trump, and then he was pro-Trump, and now he's pro-assassination of Putin, and we're just like, what? So over the weekend, he tweeted out that the only way to end the Ukraine-Russian conflict is for one of Putin's people to take him out. And then he went on to Fox News and repeated all of this again.
Let me read you the tweet, because I retweeted it earlier. Is there a Brutus in Russia? Is there a more successful Colonel Stauffenberg in the Russian military? The only way this ends is for someone in Russia to take this guy out. You'll be doing your country and the world a great service. Like, he really thought he had something with that.
And like you said it best earlier, it's like, those are the things we think, but we don't say.
Like, that's somebody's life, and honestly, Putin needs to be held accountable for his war crimes. But, like, to promote that and to say that as a U.S. senator, like, you don't think that people in Russia are using that as propaganda, like, against the West already?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we probably haven't made the best moves on our end, right? We were late to respond, and then when we did respond, we did everything possible to make the situation worse, right? We escalated with every action we made. And which is, do we want to escalate or do we want to de-escalate, right? Like, we are saying we want to de-escalate, but we only have done escalating, acts, right? If you go to your kid and you take all the kid's toys away all at once, what is the kid gonna do? Throw a fit, have a tantrum. And I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing to Russia on our end. And and then to see this, it's just like, you're making us be a bad guy. Like, you're making us look like a bad guy in this situation, and we're not the bad guy in this situation.
Mm-hmm. But I do like the fact that we haven't gone to war outright with Russia at the moment. We may have put sanctions and tried to convince them to stop, but Putin just has his foot way off, like all the way to the fucking floor.
Well, but see, comes back to what I was saying though. Like, right now, it's the world versus Putin.
Mm-hmm.
If we continue to sanction the Russian people and put the Russian people into a corner, what are they going to do? They're going to back Putin over this situation. And like, MasterCard has already ceased operations. Visa, like, all these major companies that are in the financial and Facebook, a lot of these are all ceasing operations in Russia, which, like, I guess Russia and Putin should be held accountable for their actions. But again, it's not Facebook or MasterCard's place to hurt the Russian people over the actions of their leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but their actions of their leader is the one to cause all these war crimes, and they are purposely putting their people at risk. People that are protesting, are all anti-war. Thousands of people are detained right now, and people that speak out against the government are being forced to fight in the military.
There's an
they're base.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but then again, that's not a very good plan, right? Like,
Yeah, they're just gonna flee. Like
Yeah,
I would.
right.
Bye. Like
No, and what's instead of doing it to all of Russia, if they have any accounts for Putin or anybody in his cabinet that's willingly going along with this, those are the funds that they should be like, cool, we're just going to cut this off here, and that
Yeah,
way
but-
we're not
and
helping
that
promote
was
this.
where our sanctions on Putin, on his entourage, on the Russian government themselves were one thing. And I think that was working. But these, like MasterCard pulling out of Russia, is not going to hurt the Russian government. That's going to hurt the everyday blue collar worker in Russia who goes to buy food and bread. And what are you going to do? The actions like this are going to radicalize those people because now we're actually attacking them in a way.
So on that same note, less than 30% of Russia has a passport. And if people try to flee the country, they're not going to be able to because there's a very limited window, and people without the funds or the means to get to those places are not going to be able to flee. So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like, I feel like the world has to take a stance against the Russian government. In turn, the Russian government needs to do right by its people, and if it doesn't, then the people should rise up and, take up what they need. But I don't know what that looks like, and it's just not realistic because at any point, like, regardless if we had sanctions against Russia or not, people are going to die and suffer. Like, it's just not ideal at all. How do you placate or deal with a dictator that's just swinging his dick around and will say, oh, no, I'm not going to do this, and then turns around and invades? Oh, I'm not going to do this, but is going to probably go further than Ukraine.
I'm not going to extend my presidential nomination by 2. Oh, wait, I did. Putin can be president until 2036. He wrote that into law.
Jesus.
Yeah.
They corrected that. It's open that so anybody running for president, there's no term limits now in Russia. Because before, what he did was he did his max term, then he became prime minister, like second in command, and he had a puppet in place of president.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as he could come back in, they changed the rules, so now he's president again.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, not to, go crazy, but like in the movie Fast and the Furious 5, right? It sounds crazy.
Oh my God.
But
Fast and the Furious
the
5.
dictator down there, right? The drug lord.
Yeah.
He says he gives everybody exactly what they need. Not more, not less. Because that gives them something to lose. If somebody has something to lose, you can control them. If you take everything away from them, they have nothing to lose. So are we making the situation worse by taking everything away from the Russian people and giving them nothing to lose? So now they're going to go to a despot for salvation. Like, that's what I'm worried about. Because, like, Coinbase shutting people down, Visa, MasterCard, like, it's one thing to sanction the government and to sanction the leaders committing the crimes, or, but to go after the everyday people are we any better than them?
It's interesting perspective. Like, it's one I hadn't considered before. And then I think about the people of Ukraine, right? Like, Ukraine's resiliency in the face of, this hostility and just awfulness has been amazing. Like, Zelensky has set a standard for leaders that the world leaders just can't compare to. Like, he's physically out there. And I think, like, that strength needs to be shown in Russia too. It's just a shitty situation all around. Like, I feel so bad for everybody that's affected by this or has family members that are there, because I can't imagine what it's like. Like, Russia in itself, I think, what was it? Compared to the last time I saw was like 0.00.26 or something like that compared to the national dollar. Like, their currency is completely tanked. It's just going to be
their economy.
Yeah.
But again, like, we rely on Russia for 20% of our oil imports currently. We rely on them for 80% of our what is it? It's nitrogen. are nitrogen imports. So nitrogen that we use for our fertilizing our crops. We use it to make fertilizers for all kinds of stuff. We we use that for everything. We import mainly from them. Wheat, Europe depends on Russia for wheat and natural gas. So, like, I don't know, the situation's really shitty, and we're getting to the point where we have something to lose too. So, what do we do?
We're
Like,
already really seeing the effects of this.
Look,
I can tell you in the last week where we are, fuel costs have gone up almost $1.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember on our way to eat the Crazy's family ranch, like I saw gas go from like $3.49 to $3.99 and $4 at one gas station. Like, it was fucking ridiculous, and it was only an hour out.
Yeah, Ukraine is known as like the bread basket, and they're like a big export of wheat and things of that nature. So, like, without them in action, like, that takes away. But I think we just have to find alternate means, because ultimately Putin is a dictator and he's a horrible person, and he absolutely needs to be held accountable for his war crimes. But getting there is going to be so difficult, and I do not envy people in like political office right now, because that's a job that I just couldn't do. I know I couldn't do it.
But, you know, Elon Musk has gone on a rant this over the weekend, and he's saying we need to pump up oil production in the U.S. We need to, start investing in nuclear options of nuclear power plants. And they don't have to be plutonium-based power plants. Like, we've moved past that technology where we have thorium salt reactors, which you get the same effect without the explosions, right? Or the nuclear waste.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's options that we have, but people are afraid to go nuclear energy, right? They're afraid to do alternative means besides wind and solar. In Europe, they shut down over half of their nuclear plants, and they went to natural gas plants that are supplied by Russia. So easy. You want to calm oil prices? Fire back up those plants and alleviate the need for natural gas and oil.
Have you guys watched the newest season of Space Force by chance?
No, I've watched like the first episode, and
they need a John Ralphio of Space Force to like put a spin on it, right? And so instead of calling it nuclear energy, they call it something else. They just rebrand it so people would be accepting of it.
Sweetums water.
I don't know if you ever watch Jen Psaki's press conferences, but I usually watch them on the daily, right? Like, to hear what's coming from our administration and how they feel on the matters. And like on today, she kept harping on, well, there's 9,000 permits that are not being used, 9,000 drilling permits that aren't being used. And then the last time she said it before she moved on, there's 9,000 permits that aren't being used inshore. So, okay, well, for us, like here in Texas, we have a lot of offshore drilling in the Gulf.
Mm-hmm.
Well, onshore drilling, you can have multiple permits for one well, but if you already have the well tapped, why do you need to drill another tap into it? You're just going to drain the well faster, right?
Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to explore and find a new well to tap. And that's what people are asking for. And, like, we built a big industry on fracking. We found out there is issues that come from fracking. There's a lot of aftermath that comes after it. So we don't want to frack as much anymore. So the only other options are to drill offshore or to, I don't know, like, what can we do to raise pipelines, or, well, not build pipelines, but what can we do to lower oil prices without having to buy it from Saudi Arabia, from Russia, all the other people?
Look,
well, reduce our usage, which would be a more efficient power plants or nuclear power plants. But we can't build power plants because of the EPA.
Here's what companies need to do. Give up your office spaces if you don't need them. Let your workers work from home so that we can build micro communities around grocery centers that are within walking distance. We don't need to build these giant urban expanded out cities. Just do like the UK and the rest of the EU have done.
That's more of a long-term fix. Like the problem is now. Like we need this now. And I think reflecting back on the State of the Union address, Biden said he said something along the lines of, we want more American made things. Well, isn't this in that same breath of like our production and things like that? Like it's the same mentality to me. Like depending on Saudi Arabia, where, we have difficult relations with already, then we have this issue with Russia. Like, this is exactly why we shouldn't be relying on these foreign entities for things that we need here, because now we're in this predicament and we have no way to go in the moment. Like, this is a huge problem now. Like, I agree with you, Peach, in terms of like having those micro communities. I think it's be better in the long run. But like for something right now, like it's going to be at least 30 years before that happens. I mean, gosh, our power lines are outdated by like 100 years, basically.
Here's the ultimate issue. One, you can't be corrupt in a position of power. That's number one. And number two, you can't, in a position of power over an entire country, go and try to take over a completely different country. Like that. This isn't
exactly
that world
what
anymore.
Our governments do.
I mean, but to put that in perspective, we just ended a 20-year war in another country on our end, right? So when I approach it, like I don't have a savior complex, right? Like I understand that our government has done bad things. So why should we cast stones in the first place? And two, but to bring it back to the oil, right? We lived through the Texas oil boom on our generation, right? Like I saw roads be improved and built. I saw people have money in their pockets here in Texas.
It's 99 cents.
Gas was in the $1 area, right?
Yeah,
and what we for 2008 and 2019, we exported more oil than we bought from anybody, right? Those are the only 2 years that we were exporting oil. And our current administration, back the first day of this administration, they canceled the Keystone Pipeline. They banned fracking. They started denying new oil leases. And it's like, I'm not saying we need to put an oil rig everywhere in Alaska, but why can't we find a region in Alaska and let the Alaskan people drill on their land and export oil so that they can have revenue in?
That's the thing.
Like
Nobody wants for their land to be drilled and exploited that way.
No,
like the companies,
the Alaskan governor is asking this. The federal government is telling Alaska that they cannot process the materials on their land because the federal government has claim over it.
So the only other reason I can think of that I know of, because I'm not too familiar with like the pipelines and fracking, but the reason why that this is so limited is because it makes a major impact on the environment. And it doesn't just stay confined to that one little area, like it seeps out. So, I mean, I can understand why we don't do things like this, or we shouldn't do things like this, but I also don't understand the other side of it either.
And I mean, every coin has two sides, right? Like it's not going to be a perfect fix or a perfect solution, but we could do minimal things to help us get through and get to a better spot, right? And like Jen Psaki in the press conference today was talking about the Keystone Pipeline, right? Like she was asked why won't Biden consider renewing the Keystone Pipeline, right? And they're like, well, we're still getting the oil by other means. So instead of oil flowing through a pipe from Canada to the United States to be processed, we're taking it, we're putting it in an 18-wheeler or in a train car, and then we're using fossil fuels to transport it from that location to another location so it can be processed. Like, so in that logic, aren't you polluting the air? You're risking oil spills on roads in major areas. I mean, like, there's always a pro and con to everything. And like the Keystone Pipeline has a lower risk of oil spills than a tanker driving down the highway, right? Like, it's not perfect, but there can be benefits and it can be done to minimize the risks.
Future says a lot of the oil stateside is already claimed. There are not many more undiscovered sources that are of significant volume. Offshore is really the main untapped source. Right now, there are some giant fields being drilled by Exxon off the coast of Guyana.
And that comes back to it, like her press conference today, where, you know, she finally put that word in, inshore. Or there are plenty of inshore permits, but they're not renewing any offshore permits. So,
I guess it's because of the whole BP spill and all the other spills that have happened.
Yeah. Let's say that right. British Petroleum.
BP.
You know,
Yeah.
but
That's what I
It's
said.
referred to
Yeah.
as BP.
Yeah.
huh?
Oh, were you just making a point that it was British?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they changed their name to Exxon or something, or whatever they became.
Valero owns them.
There we go. Yeah.
They merged with Valero.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think they rebranded. I think they were just absorbed.
Yeah.
But again, you know, we're in a rock and a hard place, right? If we want to sanction Russia and we want to take a hard stance against them, I don't think people would have as much of an issue with it if we opened up to be a little more energy independent here in the States. I mean, hell.
They need a long-term plan. You know, we're going to do this, and this now so we can continue to build on greener softwares and technologies, because we need it to get through so that we can get to that point where we only have to sustain ourselves off of the green stuff.
Yeah. See, I'm okay with that. Like a quick Band-Aid in order to get to the long-term solution, I'm totally fine with, as long as it's not like, I guess, like a big money grab. But how the fuck do you not expect for it to not be a money grab?
Yeah, but there is a lot of long-term solutions that we don't consider, right? Mm-hmm. We never consider the individuals. We always consider the corporations or the groups or the political parties or the organizations, right? Mm-hmm. If the government really cared about minimizing CO2 costs, they will help homeowners upgrade their houses or get onto green sources of energy by putting solar carports, solar panels on houses, you know, subsidizing foam insulation in ways so people can insulate their houses better and minimize their usage. Like, there's a lot of things that we don't do because if the government gives out solar subsidies, you know what they do? They give it to CPS. I only know this because I deal with it, right? You know, if you own a business and you want LED lighting in it and you wanted a government subsidy, you had to file your paperwork with a utility company. Utility company paid it to with the government, and that's how it went back and forth, right? So by the time the money changed, the time the money changed hands so many times, by the time it gets to you, it's nothing. And yes, you are right. I didn't add the XL to what I was talking about, but yeah.
Wow, it's interesting.
Yeah, one thing it is interesting is if you ever get curious, look up how they designed the Keystone XL pipeline. It was like a pipeline within a pipeline within a pipeline to help prevent spills.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a bad idea, but I can already see the maintenance costs being up the fucking roof.
Well, I mean, but again, when was the last time you maintenance the plumbing in your house?
We have a leak, So
Just
I
one
need
pack.
Yeah, we have a leak.
But you know what I mean? Like,
we found it today.
but compared to when was the last time you maintenance your car?
5 months ago. I only need to do an oil change about 8 months apart.
But yeah, just you think about all that it takes to run an oil tanker on the road versus running through a pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying it's a good idea to run a pipeline through beautiful country that the Dakotas are, but what other really serious options do we have? You know, when you want to look at a realist versus a dreamer's perspective, it's like, yeah, we all want to live in a nice, pretty green world where the skies are blue and all that. So how do we get there?
Solar panels produce 200% electricity, 200% efficiency.
I mean, even the best solar panel is only 80% effective.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that wraps up another great episode. And don't forget to join our amazing and supportive community on Discord.
In our Discord, you can find game nights, watch parties, food picks, Dungeons and Dragons, and more. What's not to love about that? We have a little something for everyone. Head over to our website, officialmillennials.com, and you'll find more info, especially our featured Gamer of the Week.
Speaking of something for everyone, we have a book club. We read a book almost every month and talk through it together. We also have a special perk for our subs to discuss other books in a series called Chapter 2.
Don't forget to swing by YouTube and drop us a follow at Official Millennials. You can also find us on Twitter at MillsOfficial. We appreciate all the support, and y'all have a good one.
This is an Official Millennials production.